The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, everybody, to NORML Show Live. Glad to have you here joining us on Tuesday, January 19th, 2010. We are smack dab in the middle of marijuana law reform in the 21st century, and you've reached your source for the latest news, interviews, and headlines about this political movement we're all a part of here at NORML Show Live. And joining me as my co-host here on the show every day, and our newsreader and our Roots Monday music editor, my half sister, Cannabis Carrie. Carrie? Oh, I got the wrong one. Got to push the right button, Russ. Carrie?
Hi, Russ.
Too many buttons here in the studio.
I was going to say that introduction makes it sound like I do a lot more than I actually do.
You do a wonderful job, and everybody loves you. We all are big fans of Cannabis Carrie. Check out her blog out there at cannabisfantastic.com. Got a great show for you today. We are going to be doing more of our government at work, because it seems like in state houses all across the country, everywhere you look, we're talking about legalizing marijuana in one way or another. We'll be talking with Allison Holcomb from the American Civil Liberties Union of Washington. She will be joining us to discuss decriminalization and legalization in the Evergreen State. We'll also be joined by Matt Simon from the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policies, or I think that's the name. We'll get the name right before we get to his interview. But Matt Simon will be joining us from the Granite State to talk about decriminalization there in New Hampshire. Also, for our daily Toker Tunes, we are going to be visited by Sarah Kant from Boston, Massachusetts. And we'll get some Electric Tuesday music for you in that respect. All right, so we're looking up at the chat rooms, too. Looks like a lot of people are joining us in the chat. We've probably over 100, can't count them all right off the top of my head, but all sorts of webcams are up. You can reach us at live.norml.org and just click on the screen, and that should take you right to the chat room. If you happen to miss this show or any other the rest of the shows that we broadcast here, you can catch them as a podcast at the NORML Daily Audio Stash. This is housed at the NORML Stash blog, and you can reach that at stash.norml.org. Got all of our archives going back to, gosh, I think 2006 even. So a lot of stuff for you there. Stick around. We'll be right back with some more news and information for you. We've got to take a short pause for the good cause, and seeing that it's about 5 after the hour, we got to pay some bills. So please visit our sponsors, join NORML, and get involved in the fight to secure your rights to your hemp heritage. I'm Radical Russ. We're right back after this.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
You want to legalize it? Call your congressman today. 202-224-3121. It's free, it's easy, and you don't even have to give your name, just your zip code, and they'll hook you up to your congressman. Call 202-224-3121 and tell Congress you support marijuana legalization.
Liberate your mind. Liberate your mind. Liberate your mind. Liberate your mind. That's what you got to do. Liberate your mind.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Normal News with Cannabis Carrie.
If we lock up criminal drug users, at least they won't be using drugs in prisons, right? Not so, according to an LA Times story out this week. A recent boom in cell phone smuggling has added to the breach in security in Americans' prisons, with inmates using phones to arrange drug deliveries. In California prisons alone, roughly 1,000 drug incidences are reported annually, and they have included seizures of marijuana, heroin, and other drugs. In the last 5 years, 44 inmates in the state have actually died of drug overdoses while incarcerated. Prisons have implemented anti-contraband strategies nationwide, including drug-detecting dog teams, metal detectors, and searches of staff and visitors. But despite the security in our nation's prison and the efforts to keep the drugs out of them, a mix of inmate ingenuity, complicit visitors, and corrupt staff has kept inmate drug use constant over the past 10 years. Drugs reach inmates in numerous ways: via visiting relatives, by mail, through the complicity of the prison staff, by inmates themselves who smuggle in drugs dropped off by associates at off-prison work sites. A spokesman for South Carolina's Correction Department said smuggling tactics shifted after the state installed X-ray machines and metal detectors at an all medium and high security prisons. Drug packets are now sometimes launched over prison walls by paintball guns and homemade launchers known as spud guns. Correction officers say much of the prison drug trade is controlled by gangs, and one result of that is sky-high prices. The going price for heroin or marijuana behind bars is sometimes 10 times the street price.
Yeah, to talk about some law and order here. So here we are in America, and the folks there at the Drug-Free America Foundation and all these anti-drug groups keep talking about having a drug-free America, and yet we can't keep drugs out of our maximum security prisons. Okay, folks, so the futility of thinking that we can keep 300 million free Americans from using the drugs of their choice is a ludicrous thought in the first place. And even worse, this situation with the drugs in the prisons costing 10 times more than the street value, that's only got to exacerbate the problems inside the prisons and the power that some of these gangs will have in the prisons. Once again, it's the illegality, the prohibition on marijuana and drugs that gives drugs their enormous value. You don't hear about a whole lot of prison gangs being run over alcohol these days, do you? I mean, yeah, they make their toilet water wine that they make and those things that they'll create in prison to get drunk on, but it's not nearly as big as a problem as the drugs are. Once again, we need to come up. This just shows that we need to come up with a more realistic policy in America to deal with drugs, both on the inside and the outside.
We know that Coloradans are flocking to get the right to use medical marijuana, but Westward, a Denver alternative newspaper, is reporting that just last Tuesday, the state received a whopping 1,650 applications in one day. Considering that Colorado barely had crested 5,000 applications received at the start of 2009, it appears that Colorado has a new green rush to add to its history books. Ron Hyman, who oversees the applications, say that last Tuesday is hardly a fluke. Hyman's office is overburdened with crates and crates of backlogged applications waiting to be processed, and they had just finished the applications from September. At that time, the number of total applicants had jumped up to almost 20,000, with 3,000 from September alone. There hasn't been any slowing of the applications coming in, so by the time they get done processing all 2009 applicants, that number could jump to over 30,000. Hyman tries to stay optimistic, quoting, "I figure there are only 5 million people in Colorado, so eventually I'll get to the end of my work." Until then, all those applications are waiting for his review.
Oh, wow. You know, and the thing is with Colorado's medical marijuana law is that it's different than all the other 14, I love saying 14, states that have medical marijuana, in that Colorado's is a constitutional amendment. So it's not just a law. It's not just an initiative. This is part of their constitution. And in that constitution, they state that they have a right to get their cards within a reasonable amount of time. I think it's something like 3 months, 3.5 months. Maybe a Coloradan in the chat room can correct me on that. But it is a reasonably short time, and they're missing that time window. So now we're talking about a state government organization there that is violating the Constitution if they're not getting these permits, these cards, or red cards are what they're called, out to the Coloradans in time. Now, I know here in Oregon we have kind of a similar situation with so many cards being processed by our Department of Human Services, and a really interesting side effect of that is when you turn your application into the state, and I believe this may be the same in Colorado, when you turn your application into the state, from that moment, you're legal. Right? So suppose you turn your application in on January 1st, you are legal for 1 year from that date. From January 1st, you're legal for 1 year. However, when the government in Oregon releases your card and prints it out for you, they print the date that the card was printed, and you're legal from that date on for a year. So many times people will turn in their applications on January 1st and be legal, and then by April 1st, they finally get their card, and then they're legal till April 1st of the next year. That's like getting 3 months free. So don't complain if you're not getting your card, people. Just remember that every month that they delay your card is another free month you're getting of legality from the state.
And, of course, congratulations to New Jersey, the 14th state to give its citizens the right to use cannabis for medical therapies. Just signed by the outgoing governor, our newest state medical law. Thank you.
Audience went crazy for that one, Carrie.
Thank you. Well, it's just signed by the outgoing governor, and our newest state medical law comes with increasing restrictions on the people who are allowed to use medical marijuana and on how they are allowed to acquire it. The New Jersey law forbids people from growing their own medicine. Well, now lawmakers in Michigan are looking to change their voter-approved program that began last April. Patients authorized to have marijuana for medical purpose in Michigan would no longer be allowed to grow their own supply under the legislation that is pending in the state Senate. The Republican-led Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to hear testimony today on refining the current program. Marijuana would be distributed through pharmacists from licensed dispensaries, and only 10 of those licenses would be allowed per year. Of course, critics are saying that this is an attempt to make medical marijuana even more difficult to get.
Yeah, you think? I have a big problem with this, and you know, a couple people in the chat room have listed this as well, and that is, why are these medical marijuana proposals becoming more and more restrictive when the support for medical marijuana nationwide continues to go up and up? I just posted a story today, or maybe it was last night, on the Stash blog at stash.normal.org of the latest ABC News Washington Post poll on medical marijuana, and it found nationwide, not just West Coast here, nationwide, even when we ask people in Utah and Arkansas and Tennessee and all over the country, nationwide, support for medical marijuana is now 81%. There is more support nationwide for medical marijuana than for getting rid of the BCS and having a college football playoff system. More support for medical marijuana. 81%. That means more than 4 out of 5 people walking around today in America believe in medical marijuana. And when we dig a little further into those numbers, when we ask the people who support medical marijuana what kind of medical marijuana they support, 56% of them support the idea that a doctor should be able to recommend medical marijuana for any condition he or she feels is appropriate. And White Health is posting the link up in the room too. Check it in the chat room. You can get the poll right there. 56% of the 81% who support medical marijuana say it should be like California. If a doctor recommends it, that's between the doctor and the patient, and the government has no right to get involved in between. Now, 56% of 81%, if I'm doing my math right, works out to about 45% of Americans nationwide who think medical marijuana should be California style, that we should be able to get it if our doctor recommends. Furthermore, out of that 81%, 21% of them support a list-based system, kind of like what we have in Oregon, where there's a qualifying list of conditions for which you may get medical marijuana, but thinks that list should be including people with serious illnesses, not just terminal illnesses. Only 21% support the terminal illnesses model, like what has been passed in, what was tried to pass in Minnesota and some other states here. So, 56% of the people who support medical marijuana support doctor, patient, whatever they think is cool. Another 21% on top of that support it should be like Oregon, where we have a list of conditions, but serious conditions like chronic pain would count. Okay? So let's see, 56 and 21, that's 77% of the people who support medical marijuana think it should be at least as good as Oregon, and most of them think it should be better, should be like California. 77% of 81%, if I'm doing my math correctly, is 62% of all Americans. 62% of all Americans not only support medical marijuana, they support an Oregon model or better, where people with chronic pain can use it, or even better, where your doctor can recommend it for anything. Post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, insomnia, whatever. And yet, certain people seem to think we need to trade away things like the right to home grow, things like allowing people with chronic pain to be able to get on the lists, when we have the highest support ever for medical marijuana, and damn near 2/3 of the American people suggesting an Oregon or better model. I've had it with this. The medical marijuana proposals need to be getting better, not worse.
It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere.
All right, it's time to take a look at our cannabis community calendar, which you can find up at norml.org/calendar. On Wednesday, January 20th, Benzie County NORML in Michigan will be having their meeting in Benzonia, Michigan. Contact Reverend Steve at 231-882-4496 for details. On Thursday, January 21st, Philly NORML is having their open meeting at the A Space at 4722 Baltimore Avenue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Check out phillynormal.org. On Friday, January 22nd, Joplin NORML is having their benefit concert at Kitchen Pass in Joplin, Missouri. There will be great bands there, including Knucklehead, 4DE, and my favorite new band name, Apocalypse Cow. There'll be raffles, giveaways, and contests. 21 and older only. All proceeds support Joplin, Missouri NORML. Check out joplin-normal.org. On Saturday, January 23rd, Oregon NORML is having their cardholders meeting twice monthly at the Village Ballroom, 700 Northeast Deacon in Portland, Oregon. This is for medical marijuana patients, cardholders in the Oregon program only. Washington cardholders cannot go to this meeting. Oregon cardholders only who are members of Oregon NORML. Learn how to grow marijuana, get yourself a plant clone, a little bit of medicine, and learn all about the political changes coming up in Oregon. Check out ornorml.org for details. Also on Saturday, January 23rd, a new entry to our calendar. The folks at University of New Hampshire NORML are now online. They will be having Governor Gary Johnson speaking. He was the former governor of New Mexico. Governor Gary Johnson speaking at the RLCNH conference at the Grappone Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Check out UNH at email normal.unh@gmail.com for details. And also on Saturday, Mile High Normal's Night Out at the Ganja Gourmet, 1810 South Broadway in Denver. Check out milehighnormal.org for details. And finally, Sunday, January 24th, Kush at Castleman's Kickoff Party, 2620 Walnut Street in Denver. Check out milehighnormal.org for more details. All right, folks, that's our Cannabis Community Calendar. And for more information, check out norml.org/calendar. We're right back after this with some Electric Tuesday Toker tunes. Don't go nowhere.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would send you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Law420.com. Hello, I'm Russ Belville, Outreach Coordinator for NORML. In my job, I read literally hundreds of headlines each month involving nonviolent, productive citizens whose lives are ripped apart by a marijuana or drug arrest. Many citizens could avoid arrest by refusing police searches and remaining silent, but police are well trained to confuse and intimidate. That's why you have a right to speak to an attorney before answering any police questions. I hope you never need to exercise that right, but if you do, make your first call to the law offices of John C. Lucy IV. John Lucy is an accomplished criminal defense attorney with expertise in Oregon's medical marijuana law. John Lucy understands and respects cannabis and drug consumers of all backgrounds. Call John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit in downtown Portland. Address available at law420.com. That's John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit law420.com today.
76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.norml.org.
Five of the last 7 people to run for president and the last 3 winners have all smoked pot. Marijuana, the gateway drug to the White House. You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
It's time for your Daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420-friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Our PodSafe music is donated by freedom-loving musicians who support our goal of ending adult marijuana prohibition. Today we bring you tunes for Electric Tuesday, our segment featuring the best of modern electronic music in the genres of dance, new age, house, and electronica. Brought to you by Sarah Kant Photography. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@norml.org. Now, here's some great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes. All right, we've got Sarah Kant on the line from Boston, Massachusetts. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you today, Russ?
I'm great. You know, there's a lot of news coming out of Massachusetts lately. There's that whole big special election you're having to replace the departed late Senator Ted Kennedy. What's the latest up there, and what's going on?
Well, it's been pretty busy today. Sorry, the phone's cutting out a bit. It's been a bit busy today. Sorry, I can't actually hear.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. But has there been a new election? Is there a new senator now from Massachusetts?
Not yet. That won't happen until later. People are still going to the polls. Hopefully, people are still going to the polls. It's very important today, as you know. It's become a bit of a national race. And there's 3 very interesting choices. It'll be interesting to see what happens today.
Well, we encourage everyone in Massachusetts to get out there and make your voice heard and to vote for these, vote in that special election. It's very important. It could mean mean a lot to us when we're trying to get medical marijuana passed there in Massachusetts. Sarah, let's go on to your tune.
Very much good.
Yeah, let's go on to your tune today. What do you have today for Electric Tuesday?
Well, I have a tune today by a person named Danielle. They're 22-year-old Emily Coolin from Valkensvaart in the Netherlands, and they're currently known as EC and by their actual name. Regularly featuring, collaborating, and having musical battles with other Holland-based DJ Marco Justin. Both are part of Be Yourself Music and High Contrast Recordings, as well as occasionally releasing tracks on Excessive Records. Emily can also be found on many Dutch compilations, including from the Cloud9 label. Happy Feelings is an uplifting, spacey, and rhythm-driven instrumental trance song with a 90s retro feel of optimistic positivity. This splendid example of Eurodance music will hook you into its swelling audio landscape and stimulate a sensation of energetic joy while you soak up, making you wish you were dancing high at a rave like no one was watching. Emily Coolin as Danielle can be found on GarageBand and with Marco on MySpace at Marco Justin. Hands in the air, everyone.
All right, this is Danielle with some Electric Tuesday music. Happy Feelings. Enjoy, and thank you so much, Sarah Kant.
this is Willie Nelson. Friends, it's time we legalize the responsible use of marijuana and stop treating marijuana smokers like criminals. We're destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of good, hardworking Americans every year in this country for no good reason. There's absolutely nothing wrong with smoking pot. For more information on how you can help legalize marijuana, please contact NORML at NORML.org.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527. NORML stands for Reforming America's Prohibitionist Marijuana Laws, and that cannot happen without directly engaging our government and elected officials. Local NORML chapters and other affiliated activists relentlessly lobby our lawmakers for change we can believe in and report on their strategies and progress in this segment we call Our Government at Work. All right, joining us here on Government at Work today is Allison Holcomb from the American Civil Liberties Union of Washington State. Allison, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Russ. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's so glad to have you here. And we talked to you last week, and we talked to some other folks in Washington about the two new bills that we're looking forward to in the Evergreen State. Could you tell our listeners basically a thumbnail sketch of what we're looking at now?
Absolutely. In the 2009 legislative session, two companion bills were introduced, House Bill 1177 and Senate Bill 5615. And these are essentially marijuana decriminalization bills. What they do is make possession of small amounts of marijuana by adults a civil infraction subject to a $100 penalty instead of currently a misdemeanor subject to a mandatory day in jail and a mandatory $250 fine. Then for the 2010 session, another legislator introduced a legalization bill that would have marijuana available for sale through Washington State liquor stores to adults 21 and over.
Okay, so looking at the decriminalization measure, you were saying that Washington State has a mandatory day in jail if you're caught with marijuana?
That's correct. Under our current state law, possession of no more than 40 grams is a misdemeanor subject to a maximum 90 days in jail and a maximum $1,000 fine, but also mandatory minimum penalties of a day in jail and a $250 fine.
Now that brings me to the case of Tim Lincecum, the Cy Young winning pitcher from the San Francisco Giants. He was popped in Battleground, Washington, just north of me, and he had a small amount, like a gram or something like that on him. Why did he not end up going to jail?
Well, in some of these cases, defendants are actually able to negotiate the charge down to a disposition where a conviction isn't necessarily entered. Maybe they're put on probation for a period of time, and as long as they comply with the terms of probation, the case is dismissed.
Okay.
However, if you're convicted, whether you either plead guilty or you're found guilty at trial, if you're actually convicted, then you are subject to those mandatory minimums.
Okay. And then I think that's what happened with Mr. Lincecum, is that he ended up copping a plea to the paraphernalia charge, and then they dismissed the marijuana charge. But is that something that in Washington State is kind of a geographical hit or miss? Like if you're in King County, you might be okay, but if you're in some of the eastern counties, you might not be?
Absolutely. And Seattle is a classic case of this. We've recently elected a new city attorney, Peter Holmes, who has recently stated publicly that he's going to dismiss all misdemeanor marijuana cases that have already been filed, ones that are already pending, and will not file any new misdemeanor marijuana cases within the city limits. That's very different from the rest of the state. Not only do we see geographic discrepancies in how prosecutors handle misdemeanor marijuana cases, but we also see racial disproportionality in how these cases are handled. In the state of Washington, an African American is 3 times as likely as a white person to be charged with a misdemeanor marijuana crime. That's one of the reasons why we think these bills are so important to get passed. We need to get rid of these discrepancies in the way that people are treated, that people who use marijuana.
Okay, let's take a look now at the other bill, the bill that would just go outright and legalize marijuana. What are some of the details of that as far as what a person would be allowed to possess or purchase or grow on their own?
Essentially, the way that House Bill 2401, Prime sponsor Representative Mary Lou Dickerson introduced it this year, essentially what it does is it treats it exactly like hard alcohol. So it would, here in Washington, hard alcohol is only available through state-owned and operated liquor stores, and it's only available to people 21 and over. You have to go to a store and purchase alcohol there. You can't distill your own alcohol. This is one of the issues that I believe there was going to be some discussion about amendments being introduced to the bill. Under Washington state law, there's an exception for home brewing and home winemaking, so you can do that privately. And is currently written, the House Bill 2401 doesn't have that kind of exception for the private growing of marijuana for your own personal use. And I think that's one of the things that the sponsors just overlooked when they were drafting it, and they're looking to amend it and add that in. But currently you would go to a Washington state liquor store and purchase marijuana there. The bill doesn't have any limitations on the amounts that you can purchase. The Washington State Liquor Control Board is charged with implementing regulations for packaging and product quality, transporting, shipping, storage, and also collecting a tax on all marijuana that's sold through the stores.
Okay. I'm checking out the chat in our chat room right now, and there's some concern from some folks that bring up the point about selling marijuana in liquor stores and whether or not marijuana ought to be alongside a hard, deadly, dangerous, addictive drug like alcohol. Do you have any opinions on that or any explanation as to why the liquor store model is something that people want to look at in Washington?
Well, I think that what Representative Dickerson was looking to do when she originally introduced the bill is say, look, here in Washington, we already have a regulatory model in place for intoxicating substances. It works well for us, and since that's in place, it seems like the simplest way to get from point A to point B would be to introduce marijuana to the exact same regulatory model. Now, the point that some of your listeners are concerned about is one that was raised by Representative Roger Goodman, who is a member of the House Committee on Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. At last Wednesday's hearing, he mentioned that he was uncomfortable with having marijuana sold in liquor stores and pointed out that in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, the cannabis cafes are separate from alcohol, and that in that context, what they have discovered, the Dutch have discovered, is that it's important to separate the two. Now, I haven't, really thought about cost-benefit analysis of the difference between selling marijuana and alcohol for consumption alongside one another. I think the Dutch are wise to separate them because perhaps there is some impairment of judgment if you're allowed to purchase and consume both substances in the same place at the same time. I'm not really sure that we have to have that separation in a store. When you go to a Washington State liquor store, you don't consume the product on site. It's different from going to a bar. Now, what Representative Dickerson's bill doesn't discuss, if I remember correctly, is whether or not a bar could sell marijuana retail for on-site use. So there is that distinction that I think needs to be worked out and discussed a little further, because maybe it wouldn't be so bad to sell cannabis at the same location as alcohol. You're taking it somewhere else, and that could be different from being able to ingest both in one location.
Do you expect that these two bills are currently in their final form, or are these the kind of things that could be marked up with all sorts of different changes through the amendments process in the committees?
every bill that gets introduced in the legislature can be marked up at any point along the way until the full chamber votes on a form of the bill. It can't be considered final. And even then, for example, if the House were to vote to pass either House Bill 1177 or House Bill 2401, it still has to go over to the Senate for approval, and they may mark it up with changes, and there may have to be a concurrence conference where they agree to changes. So basically, until the governor, even the governor, has the ability to veto portions of a bill. So until the governor signs a bill into law, it's never in its ultimate permanent form.
You said the governor could veto portions. Does that mean Washington State governor has a line item sort of power?
Correct.
Okay. We're speaking with Allison Holcomb from the American Civil Liberties Union of Washington State regarding a decriminalization bill and a legalization bill in Washington State. If people that are listening to the show or in our chat room want to get involved with this and make some changes or to help support these measures, do you have any email or website or phone numbers that you could give them?
Absolutely. The American Civil Liberties Union of Washington website is www.aclu-wa.org. You can also email me directly with questions about these bills. My email address is Holcomb, Holcom, M as in mouse, B as in boy, at aclu-wa.org. We also have a public education campaign website, marijuanaconversation.org, where you can learn more generally about marijuana reform activities going on in the state of Washington.
Also, you guys were behind the Marijuana It's Time for a Conversation video that was out with Rick Steves and Deborah Small and yourself and a bunch of other folks. Is that what they're going to find at that website?
That's right. That's the marijuanaconversation.org website. It's part of a public education campaign, and of course, you know, Rick Steves is a member of NORML's advisory board, and we are so happy that we've been able to work with him on this public education campaign. He brings such a credibility and a mainstream voice to the issue, and we were fortunate enough, we had scheduled a forum, a public screening of the video and a public discussion forum last Tuesday evening before we found out that these bills were getting scheduled for hearing on the following day. So that was a nice coincidence that we were able to engage folks in the area in a conversation about the issue before that hearing. And the hearing room was packed, and we heard wonderful testimony from the current presidents of the Washington State Bar Association and the King County Bar Association, as well as former presidents, former state representatives. And Sanho Tree flew all the way out from Washington, D.C. Sanho's also in the video, and he gave wonderful testimony. All of that's available, archived on the tvw.org website. It's a 2-hour hearing, and folks could find it very interesting, some of the comments.
All right, check that out. And another question here from the chat room. Adam in Washington is bringing up a couple of bills, and I'm not familiar with them. I hope you can maybe address these. A Bill 1177 and a Bill 5615, something about drug testing in the state of Washington. Do you have any info on that?
Well, House Bill 1177 is the decrim bill, and Senate Bill 5615 is its companion. So they're identical bills. They don't include anything about drug testing. There's no requirement for drug testing involved. There's nothing in the bills that says that you can't drug test anymore. As you know, drug testing is carried on now by 50% of private employers, and that's something that we have to continue to do public education around that issue and bring employers up to speed on the fact that if you really want to test employees for impairment, there are much more accurate ways to do that. As we know, metabolites from marijuana use are in the system for a long time and don't show impairment. And in fact, people can be impaired from sleep deprivation, from over-the-counter drugs, from hangovers. There's lots of ways that people can be impaired, and we have better ways of testing for that than simply testing their urine for metabolites.
I completely agree, and drug testing is something we're going to have to look at as we start introducing more of these decrim, legalization, and medical marijuana bills. Allison Holcomb's from the American Civil Liberties Union of Washington with their drug law reform project, and thanks for joining us, Allison.
It's my pleasure, Russ. Thanks for having me.
All right, when we come back, we'll be speaking with Matt Simon from New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Drug Policy.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Marijuana and alcohol are the two most popular recreational drugs in America. Marijuana smoking is non-toxic, relatively safe, and has a low risk of dependence. Alcohol drinking is potentially fatal, dangerous to society, and is quite addictive. Marijuana is safer, so why are we driving people to drink? That's the question of the new book, Marijuana is Safer, So Why Are We Driving People to Drink? By Paul Armentano, Mason Tvert, and Steve Fox. Visit Amazon.com or ChelseaGreen.com today to order your copy of Marijuana is Safer, or visit MarijuanaIsSafer.com.
NORML Show Live reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while and share.
Cause the day was hard and your work was long and you need a break from all that's wrong. You better look at the clock cause it's 4:19. Time to reach in that pocket for your bag of green and smoke that weed. Smoke that weed. Smoke that weed.
I have some music there from Nice Peter, Smoke That Weed. Welcome back to NORML Show Live. Radical Russ here, and we go from one side of the continent to the other side of the continent, all the way up in the granite state of New Hampshire. We're joined by Matt Simon. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Russ. Good afternoon. Great to be here.
You know, I'm pretty sure I butchered the name of your organization. I know it had Common Sense in it somewhere. Could you tell people who you represent and what website they can reach you?
That's right. Sure. It's the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy.
I got it.
And for people who don't like to say all that, yeah, I think you did. You said drug policy one time, and I think you got it right the other time. And I commend you for that because a lot of people get it wrong. And I encourage people to just call us NH Common Sense or New Hampshire Common Sense. That seems to work pretty well. And it goes right along with our website, which is nhcommonsense.org.
All right, nhcommonsense.org. And tell us about the common sense that you're proposing up there in New Hampshire this year.
Well, we have two bills that are going to have public hearings tomorrow afternoon in the House Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. They are HB 1652 and HB 1653. Different sponsors, same topic, marijuana. One is a decriminalization bill, that would be 1653, and one is a tax and regulate marijuana legalization bill, HB 1652. The hearings are back-to-back in the same room 204, the Legislative Office Building in Concord, at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
All right. Now, do you guys have a live web stream of the audio or video for these hearings?
There is a live audio and video stream available from the New Hampshire website. It is nh.gov, and if you click through to the legislative stuff, you'll see a click for the live streaming. But that doesn't apply for the committee hearings that'll be tomorrow. That's only, I'm sorry, for stuff that they do in the main chamber.
Okay.
There will be audio available after the fact of the hearing. I hope to come out of there with a good bit of video. We are allowed to bring cameras in, so we do have somebody that goes in with a video and records things, and we can put them up on YouTube if they're not too long. So the best testimony from tomorrow will certainly be on the site at nhcommonsense.org as soon as we can process it.
Okay. Can you give us some of the details, the nuts and bolts of these proposals with regard to limits or ability to grow at home or anything like that?
Sure. And that's obviously something that, there are a lot of different opinions about what is the best proposal to put forward, especially for the tax and regulate bill. Should people be allowed to grow their own? If so, how many plants? Should we do it through the state liquor stores, the way I heard about that bill in Washington? Or should we have it set up separately? So we understanding that this is a bill that, virtually nobody would think has any chance of passing, but it is a way to get this conversation started and a way to say to this committee, okay, if not this way, then how should we do it? How should we end marijuana prohibition in New Hampshire? What is the most socially responsible way to end this ridiculously failed prohibition? So we're putting forward what we think is a good bill, and it does allow limited cultivation. Individuals can grow up to 3 plants and be free from prosecution, but it creates a system of licensed wholesalers who are permitted to cultivate marijuana and sell it to retailers, and it creates a system of licensed retailers who are allowed to sell it to adults over 21.
Okay. I always love the proposals that recognize people's rights to grow at home. I always think that that's the only way we have any leverage against either governments or businesses, jacking us on the price or jacking us on the quality. We got to have some sort of home grow to protect that, I think. Looking at
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Russ.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, if I could throw in,
Sure.
we got into that situation all last year with our medical marijuana bill. A lot of people remember it passed the House and Senate as a bill allowing patients to grow their own or have a caregiver to grow for them. And when our governor said he would veto it and that he objected to people growing their own, the legislature rewrote that bill and took grow your own out of it. And now we see that that's kind of become the model in other states, and that's certainly nothing that was intended. But it really brings up, I think, the difference between working through the legislature, where all you can do is really make suggestions, and the legislature is going to make its own decisions, as opposed to a ballot initiative where you can put language that you want on the ballot and have people vote on it.
Right. And a lot of people need to understand that when we're talking about initiatives, in the United States, there's only 26 states that actually have the initiative system, and they're usually more of the western states, the frontier states. And when we start talking about the colonial states and the early, the early United States, they're usually top down and everything goes through the legislature, and you can't do an initiative. So sometimes the politics are different. Right?
Very much so. I think New Hampshire's, got a very pretty pro-liberty constitution. It was ratified before the U.S. Constitution. And of states that don't have initiatives, I think we've got it pretty well made with a citizen legislature and a very open process. Every bill gets a public hearing. Nothing gets balled up in committee. Every bill gets a vote on the floor, even if the committee is unanimously against it. So there are all sorts of things that we have going for us, but the ability to put a question in front of voters is not one of them. So we have to go through this process where, at the end of the day, we have to convince, the majority of the legislature to go along with something, and that brings about politics being the art of compromise.
Yeah.
It's pretty messy sometimes. The choices are difficult.
And you mentioned that citizen legislature, and I was surprised to learn this through my discussions with you, but that the New Hampshire legislature is almost as big as the federal Congress.
That's right. 400 members in the New Hampshire House of Representatives. They make $100 a year. They don't even have offices in the State House. They get a little puppy hole that, in the committee room, and they get a locker, a very small locker that they could put some stuff in when they arrive. But it's really, you call them at home, they're pretty much regular people, and there's one for every 3,000 or so people.
And looking at it from a political or a social point of view, people that may live outside the area kind of look up at the northeast corner of the United States, and they see Massachusetts and New York and Vermont, and they think of, this sort of liberal progressive paradise. What is it like for you boots on the ground there in New Hampshire with regard to support for these marijuana proposals? How do the average New Hampshireites feel about these things?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we have a long tradition of live free or die in this state. It's a state motto, live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils. So it's not compared. I used to live in the South, West Virginia, Kentucky, Mississippi. I've lived in a lot of the southern conservative type states, and the conservatism that tends to prevail down there is a very religious based, very sometimes moralistic type of conservatism. And New Hampshire actually has, I think, the lowest church attendance of any of the 50 states. The conservatism up here tends to be at least more favorable. There are a lot of libertarians, is what I'm saying, within the New Hampshire Republican Party, and there tends to be an attitude of what you do in your own house is up to you. there's an attitude, we don't have motorcycle helmet laws, we're the only state that doesn't have a mandatory seatbelt law. And these are things that the Republicans are all for.
Yeah.
So it's obviously incredibly hypocritical for them to say you should be able to take the risk of not wearing a seatbelt and a helmet and all these other things. But if you risk using marijuana, we're going to have to put you in jail for your own good, because that's what Nixon said was important.
Yeah,
so
that's an interesting comparison.
A lot of schizophrenia in the state now, and it's obviously a generational thing as well. The legislature is made up of a bunch of retired people, partly because they only can make $100 a year as legislators. People pretty much have to be retired to run, so it's an average age of 65. And there are several legislators in their 20s, so that means there are a lot of them in their 80s, too. So.
Wow. Well, Matt Simon from New Hampshire Common Sense, check him out at nhcommonsense.org. We're going to get some reforms passed this year in New Hampshire, I'm sure of it. Thanks for joining us, Matt. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ross. Great to talk to you.
All right. We're going to round up the show here. We're just going to wind things up, getting our last few minutes in. Got Carrie has been checking out the chat room. Anything we need to address from the chat room, Carrie?
No, I think that your two guests covered almost every question that was asked of them, which is fantastic. I sure love the chat function.
I know. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate everyone who's logging in here at live.normal.org. We do this show every day, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We also have a 1 hour musical show before the live stream and 1 hour after. So you can hang out in the chat room. We can continue to discuss these things. Carrie and I hang out in the chat room. We'll answer your questions as best we can. And you get to enjoy a whole bunch of really cool pod-safe toker tunes. It's good fun for everyone. I'm really looking forward to those Washington bills myself. I know here on the Pacific Northwest, we are looking to become the first area of the country to legalize marijuana. It's almost like we're in a race. It's us and California and Washington all having a good time trying to get this done. Coming up on tomorrow's show, I want to give you a preview. Tomorrow is our Cannabis Science Day. We will be joined live by Dr. Mitch Earlywine, who is a drug and alcohol researcher from the State University of New York at Albany, the editor of Pot Politics, the author of A Parent's Guide to Marijuana and Understanding Marijuana. If you've got a cultural, scientific, or medical or historical question about marijuana, he's the guy that can answer it. You can send him email directly at 420research@gmail.com. That's 420research@gmail.com. Or just ask your questions on the chat tomorrow. We'll take those questions live, and I'll bring them up with Dr. Earlywine. Should be a good show. Also, for our Daily Toker Tunes tomorrow will be Irie Wednesday, featuring some music brought to us by Johnny Reeferseed and the High Rollers. They're not playing the music, they're actually editing the music. So it'll be some other group playing some sort of reggae or dance hall ska type of music for you for our Irie Wednesday. For the rest of the week, we have Groovin' Thursday with some rap, hip-hop, R&B, funk, soul music. And on Friday, we have Rockin' Friday with the best in metal and rock and hard rock and jam bands. So hope you join us every day here at Normal Show Live. Make sure that you are telling your friends about this. Post us on Twitter. Post us in your MySpace, Facebook, all of those places. We want to get the word out and make this the most popular destination for live marijuana talk and news throughout all of cyberspace. Anything you'd like to say before we call it a day, Cannabis Carrie?
Nope, just wishing everybody a warm and wonderful weather today. We'll send a little Oregon weather your way. It's actually warm here on the coast.
Yeah, it's turning out okay here, too. We actually managed to see this big, bright, yellow glowing disc in the sky. It was frightening at first, but I think we've grown used to it. All right, for everyone here at the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, I'm Radical Russ Belville, signing off for Normal Show Live. Check out NORML.org for all the latest in marijuana news and reform. Join us. You can also check out NORML.org/chapters if you want to get involved with a local chapter in your area. And if there's not a local chapter in your area, I am NORML's outreach coordinator. Send me an email at stash@normal.org and we'll get you started. More music coming up next. Take care of each other, tokers.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it out one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it.